So this is the current setup of the PA cabinet as of June 2017. So we'll go step by step through the parts. So first up is the 100 watt Nextech PA amplifier. This was installed pretty recently, a couple of years ago. This used to be basically in storage, and before that we were using this Duquesne solid state amplifier, which has leaked capacitors. So basically I added this one, and everything's been switched over. So a quick rundown of this. On the very left we have the power button, followed by a headphone output, which we don't usually use, but if you have like the stage your sound card here, you can use it as an input to that. The 4 mic knobs aren't hooked up to anything because we're using an older preamplifier up here, and I'll go through why we can't hook them up directly. And there's finally the VCR DVD knob, which we also don't use. So everything basically just hooked up to the master dial. So we're not using this in preamp mode, we're basically using it in amplifier mode. So all this does is amplifies the incoming signal from the As a bonus, there's also an analog VU meter, which shows you the wattage being utilized along with the output volume in decibels. Next up is the preamplifier as well as the older amplifier. So this amplifier I'll go through because we don't use it anymore. This is a Duquesne solid state. It's still powered because this happens to have a 24 volt AC output, which can power this preamplifier, because these two were always meant to be used together. The problem with the preamplifier and why we can't move it over to the new amplifiers, all the mic cables are essentially soldered in to this preamplifier. There are screw terminals in the back, and they're all screwed in or soldered, depending on mic wires and some of the auxiliary inputs. Whereas for this Nextech, it has XLR and quarter-inch ports on the back for us to use. So we have to solder XLR connectors on our cables, which we haven't done yet. So essentially, this amplifier only exists as a power supply to power the preamp. Now for the preamp. First of all, on the very left, we have the on-off switch. This basically remains on 24/7, so that the preamp is powered and is outputting audio to the amplifier. The power LED is broken. As for, we have 4 microphone inputs, which we've labeled pretty recently this year, along with the volume knob for the auxiliary input. And you also have auxiliary input selection to choose where you want to feed audio from. And finally, we have the master. So the master ones are a bit redundant, but they work nonetheless. And finally, a record port, which outputs mic level audio over quarter-inch, which can also be used to connect to the sound card, similar to that. So some more information on our 4 mic dials. Microphone number 1 is hooked up to the top of the PA rack. Microphones number 2 are XLR inputs in front of the stage. Microphone plug number 3 is not what it says here. It's actually, there are 2 plugs in market square, one on the steps and one above the microphone patch panel, which maybe we'll show. And the 4th one is hooked up to a couple of mic ports around the cafeteria, which basically aren't used anymore because some of the wires aren't hooked up anymore. These 2 little knobs in here, or you need a screwdriver or something like a key to rotate them, but this is the bass and treble dials. They're hooked up backwards, so rotating it counterclockwise here to what would normally be minimum puts the bass to maximum. Same thing with treble, you'd rotate it counterclockwise to make it high and clockwise to lower it. The auxiliary inputs and auxiliary input volume knob work together. This basically chooses what you're getting the input from, and this chooses how loud it is. So we only have 2 or 3 of the inputs here hooked up. So off is self-explanatory. Tuner is, there's an RCA port on the back of the preamplifier for the tuner, and we have it hooked up to this auxiliary cord here. So we have a 3.5 millimeter headphone cable that's actually converted to RCA. It's actually a partially broken cable because one of the stereo channels doesn't work, but it's just fine because this is mono anyway. So tuner essentially is this 3.5 millimeter to RCA cable, and I just wrap it around through the hook or through the handle so that we don't lose it inside the cabinet. Input number 1 is hooked up to radio lamp. In the radio lamp room, on the wall there are 2 plugs. One is a quarter-inch and one is an XLR. The quarter-inch plug goes to the office, terminates in RC. It's unbalanced, so that's what feeds most of the school day announcements. And there's an XLR port, which is hooked up to here under input number 1. So that's interesting, I suppose. Finally, the tape input is at the very top of the PA rack. We've got this XLR and tape in, tape out ports. Tape out isn't connected, the wires are loose in the back. Tape in is connected to the tape on this input selector, and XLR is connected to the mic 1, although it's a little bit glitchy. So for example, for simple assemblies, say you wanted to get one microphone, we usually leave this volume about here. You turn on mic number 2, which is the plugs in front of the stage. If you're going to be feeding audio from mostly radio lamp, like if you have a laptop there with the projector, then set it to input number 1, adjust the volumes accordingly so that they're not, so the voice to music ratio is fine, and then you're good. Say you're also doing a lunchtime event with just music, well, that's even simpler. Just keep it on input 1, adjust your volumes to be relatively high, and then you can control the volume from. So the last thing I'll mention about this PA rack is you may have to get to the back side to make changes, say to plug in new microphone cables or swap out amplifiers or plug cables in usually. Well, there's a simple way to do so. This whole thing, actually, there's a hinge on the back, which allows the whole thing to open and fold it out. There are 2 holes, one here and one here, besides where we normally lock the panel. So basically, with a flathead screwdriver, you can unscrew that and unscrew this, and then the whole rack can open up, making it much easier to plug in any wire. So in conclusion, this is the PA cabinet that's backstage and that runs the Cafeteria speakers.